And here we are, review number 100. Kind of surprising, honestly. Like, I didn't even notice until I was well into the 80s that I was about to reach this kind of milestone. So hey, might as well celebrate and make something out of it, I guess. So over the course of about a year and a half, I randomly decided to make watching movies my hobby, and I started dropping reviews for the movies that I watched, but with a catch. I wouldn't come up with a review for what I watched until about a full week after viewing it. I make my reviews based solely on the memory of how said movie impacted me after returning to daily life. It's been a trip, I can tell you that much. And after completing 100 movies in this fashion, now I feel that I can speak on my top picks from the experience. I wasn't necessarily following a theme when I started this project. That being said, I've come across a lot of hidden gems in this run, a handful of which made it to my top 10 favorites of all time list. But on the flip side, there's also been some really bad ones. And I mean really bad. Bad to the point that for one movie, I rented it for $5 and I used my Amazon points to pay for it, and I still wanted a refund. So here's what we're gonna do. I made a list of the top 5 best and worst movies that I watched during this whole thing. And we're gonna go through them at the same time in ascending order, with a brief description of what the movie is for the ones that haven't seen it, as well as my overall final thoughts on the film as a whole. So let's start with the number 5 spot for the best list. White God. This was one of the few times I was sad that the review I made for the movie didn't reach a larger audience. White God centers on a dog named Hagen, and it follows his perspective as he's forcefully separated from his owner by her dog-hating father and forced to fend for himself in a severely dog-racist town. It's a Hungarian film, and I'm glad it's foreign, because I could see some kind of American directors try to anthropomorphize the dogs to have them, like, spout exposition or even worse, some kind of one-liners about the situation, which would take away from the gravity of the film and its story itself. This movie is all kinds of allegorical to the plight of the underclasses of society, and I get that, but that didn't stop me from enjoying it at face value for the story that it's presenting. The part that blew me away the most was the ending. There was a motif set up from the beginning of the film that serves as a key point in the climax when tensions are at their highest, and I gotta say, it's amazing that they got so many dogs to pull that scene off so flawlessly. I think about that final shot often, actually. We're starting off strong for the top 5 best list, thankfully, but I can say the same for the number 5 worst spot, but just for the opposite reason. Green Knight. Oh shit, I just noticed both number 5 entries' titles are just color plus noun. Funny that. Anyway, Green Knight is an adaptation of the Arthurian legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it was the first time I felt thoroughly let down by an A24 film. A lot of the marketing for this movie built up a ton of hype, but barring the stunning visuals from time to time, it was boring as shit. I believe there's a term for when a protagonist of the story is more reactive to the plot than proactive, but the bulk of this movie is just Dev Patel going from set to set and seeing things happen around him going, oh, okay, cool. The most agency he has in the movie is at the very end when he's forced to face the Green Knight proper, and most of that section was a fake out to a possible outcome of his decision. Super whack all around. And I actually liked the fable before watching this movie, but it almost soured it for me. Thankfully, number 4 on the good list has enough action to cover itself and this snore fest of a movie. Caught Stealing. Funnily enough, when I first heard of this movie, I thought the title was a reference to Jane's addiction. Bit bummed that it wasn't, but I understand the real reference now. Caught Stealing follows Austin Butler as a former baseball phenom who becomes the center person of interest in a turf war between multiple outfits of criminal activity in New York. Dude, Just one look at the trailer and you can tell how much of a whirlwind of chaos this movie is. When people talk about movies having you on the edge of your seat, this is the kind of movie that they're referring to. From moment to moment, I had no idea how things were going to end up. And I found that uncertainty exhilarating because, let's face it, a fair share of movies nowadays start to lean into predictability more often than not. So it was refreshing to have an experience that keeps you on your toes. Also, I appreciate that it wasn't just mindless action as well. The character arc that Austin Butler goes on is genuinely heartfelt, and I even took some lessons of my own when I watched this one. Once again, we have the exact counterpart for number 4 on the bad list, from everything happening to nothing at all. Foe. I don't even remember how this movie showed up on my radar, but I remember that after I finished it, I made my criteria for picking movies a lot stricter. Foe stars Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal as a younger married couple going through relationship trouble as they try to survive out in the middle of nowhere. Eventually, a counselor gets put into the mix, and it raises the tension between all parties involved dramatically. I mean, I like Saoirse, and I'm okay with Paul, but neither of them were strong enough draws to sit through this movie, in my opinion. This is another case of nothing happens, but it's like 3 times more severe than Green Knight. At least Green Knight had good visuals. There's also a big twist reveal right before the end that was hinted at through the movie. Big air quotes on that. But by the time I reached that point, I couldn't give a shit about any of what transpired through the entire runtime. This also soured me on Paul Mescal too, and right after Aftersun, no less. What a shame. That movie was a pretty shit showcase of marital problems, but Good List's number 3 spot more than makes up for it. Little Fish. I've got a personal rule about not watching movies about dementia and memory loss because that's one of my deep fears. But I made an exception for this movie, and I'm so glad that I did. Little Fish follows Olivia Cooke and Jack O'Connell as they struggle to maintain their relationship while one suffers from a seemingly incurable disease that causes memory loss of all things. This is the rawest and most intimate depiction of love I've ever seen. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like in either position during this trial, the one deteriorating or the one forced to watch helplessly. There are moments in this movie that get really uncomfortable, but in a good way, as it shows the vulnerability that both sides have to face while trying to navigate the situation. The conflict doesn't even have to be strictly memory loss. I feel like this depiction of a relationship struggling can be universal to simulate a whole number of situations in the same category. Both of the leads were such damn good actors that they have reserved status in my mind, so now I'm more inclined to watch a movie if they're a part of it. Olivia Cooke for sure because that was the draw to Sound of Metal, and Jack O'Connell because, hold on, wait, him? As wholesome as their relationship is, Bad List number 3 is, very far from that. Isla. The poster? Sick. The premise? Pretty interesting. The lead actress? Gorgeous beyond belief. The plot? Nah. Nah, fam. Isla follows a guy named Elton as he, somehow, resurrects his deceased 4-year-old sister as a fully grown adult 30 years later. On paper, it sounds decent enough to watch on a whim, but in practice, it was poor all around. I don't fault movies that don't have Marvel movie budgets for their technical faults, but I draw the line with this one in particular. Everything felt disjointed and scattered around the board, but the real reason it's so high on the bad list is the very blatant sexual tension between the leads. Remember, this is supposed to be his sister. Not only that, but she died at 4, so it's implied she still has the mind of a 4-year-old as well. And it's very heavily implied, and particularly shown, but that could have been a dream sequence, that they get together at some point in the movie. Extremely gross, top tier creepy, and if it wasn't for my brain working overtime trying to separate the story from the actress, I'd have given this an even lower score. That was easily the most disturbing movie on either list, but the number 2 spot for the good list is downright horrifying, in the best way possible. Incantation. Now, I don't consider myself an ultra horror movie buff, but at the same time, I'm not one to scare easily either. That being said, this is the first and only movie that freaked me out to my very core. Incantation follows a mother who is trying to reverse a curse placed upon her and her daughter. Sounds simple enough, but there's aspects of this movie that hit very close to home, in one case quite literally. As you come to understand the lore of the haunting itself, it makes you second guess yourself as it plays with the fourth wall like a game of hopscotch. Quick side story. I have one of those recliner couches at home, and when I was watching this movie, my phone slipped between the cushions and hit the metal frame at the exact same time as an early jump scare in the movie, and I was so scared that I almost got into my car and drove, not just away from the house, but out of the whole damn city as well. Also, this movie gets honors as the first movie I had to pause and mentally prepare myself for the climax. Yes, it's that good. Paradoxically, I have a similar amount of high praise for the bad list's number 2 spot. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say about this one. I forgot that's number 1. Goddamn. I'm bad all over again. Alright. Joker 2. This might be the only movie for these lists that require no real introduction. Everyone is at least familiar with the character. Everyone has heard about the movie, and a lot of people were anticipating the sequel. But I don't think anybody anticipated how abrasive the sequel was going to be. I'm working on an instance video to talk more in depth about what I think about the movie, but to summarize, I gave it a 5-star, not because it deserved it, but because the object of all art is to invoke a reaction within the observer. And without a doubt, this invoked the strongest sense of revulsion that I've ever experienced from a creative piece. It felt like a full-on character assassination in cinematic form. Like, sure, I have my gripes with the first Joker movie, but I still appreciate it for the movie that it was. But this was the most blatant fuck you to the entire fan base that was built up from the first installment. But above all else, the biggest sin of this movie was the fact that it was a stealth musical. One more pair to go. And seeing as we've saved the best for last, we move into the good list's number 1 spot. Fire Walk With Me. Shortly after discovering that I was closing in on review number 100, I asked a Twitter mutual for a recommendation as a guest spot to cap off the list. Shout out Kazi. Go follow him on all socials. He deserves it. He recommended Twin Peaks, and having no knowledge about the series at all, I jumped right into it. So this was the first time I saw a David Lynch film, and I had no idea what I was getting into. Initially, I almost turned it off during the beginning scene with Will the Dancer because I had no clue where things were going, but shortly after that came the scene where everything was explained, and I instantly locked in from that point on. I'm a sucker for surrealism in media, but watching this was many magnitudes above what I was accustomed to. At times, it felt like scenes were hitting me directly in my subconscious, and I wasn't really interpreting things as much as I was absorbing them. It was a hell of a trip, and that's only like half of the movie. The other, more grounded half follows Laura Palmer in the final week before her death at the start of the TV show that this movie is a prequel for. The whole of the story was harrowing in ways that the phrase train wreck in slow motion is only the beginning to describing it. As great as this movie is, I'm debating on whether or not to follow up on the TV show to finish out the story. It's either that, or I could just leave this as a standalone experience like the dream it felt like it was when I finished it. And now that we've reached the highest high, we can now get into the lowest low with the number 1 for the bad list. I Saw the TV Glow. Ooh boy. Ooh boy. Oh man. The number 1 worst movie out of all 100 that I've gone through in this run. And what a fucking doozy it was. Remember when I talked about a movie that I didn't have to pay for and I still wanted a refund? It was this movie. I Saw the TV Glow follows Owen as he struggles with his identity following the return of a former close friend from high school. And son of a bitch, dude. Do you remember back in the day when YouTubers would poke fun at Twilight for being overly dramatic and hyper blasé about everything? This is those parodies on steroids. The terrible acting and the dialogue is one thing. The terrible execution of the premise is another. The trailer would have you believe that the story is centered on the mysterious cult TV show that the lead character is bonded over. But besides a few scenes, it's barely expanded upon in a satisfactory way. I was promised a Candle Cove-like experience from the trailer, but all I was given was Owen's self-discovery, which was also bullshit, even in the context of the movie itself. There's a whole arc of him living a normal and successful life, but it gets sidelined to serve as a segue into the next appearance of the other lead character after, what, the third disappearance? Like, come on, bruh. Don't just skip over the fact that he's usually fine when he's left alone, just to fit your narrative. I swear to God. Oh my fucking God. I swear to God, the vast majority of the glowing reviews for this movie are from people that felt compelled to like it for its subject matter. And even that is shit, because Nimona covers it 1,000 times better. Oh my God, I'm fucking getting heated all over again. I'm cutting it here before I pop a damn blood vessel or some shit. And there you have it. The top 5 best and worst movies that I've come across in this year and a half, 100 movie side quest that I stumbled into. Overall, it was a fun experience. I can honestly say that more often than not, I've come across a movie that I would recommend to my friends to watch, or even go so far as to own my own physical copy for my collection. I've also been introduced to all sorts of new genres that I like, series to follow up on, directors and actors as well, and even source materials that I've garnered an interest in after doing all this. But it's a shame that this is only the top 10 movies out of the 100 that I watched. I don't believe there would be enough time to shout out each and every movie that I've gone through for this gauntlet. Or is there?